Hey friend, welcome to the Halfway to Dead podcast. I'm your host, Jen Lovell. Listen, you and I have reached that age where we are done with the bullshit. We know that midlife is our chance to flip the script and experience life on our own terms. It's time to reconnect with our higher selves and reclaim our inner peace. Are you ready with an open heart and an open mind? Awesome, you're in the right place. Hop in and ride shotgun with me on this midlife spiritual journey. Hey guys, I have a really special episode for you today. Today I interview Nichole Bigley. Nichole is an author and she has co-written with Dr. Scott Guerin the book Looking for Angels, a guide to understanding and connecting with your angels. She's also a Reiki master, energy healer, psychic, intuitive, and she's been channeling angels her entire life. So Nichole's mission is to help others not feel alone in their spiritual journey. And that's what we're doing right now, right? We're on our midlife spiritual journey. And she helps us better understand our path, our abilities, so that we can live in alignment with our truth and purpose. We talk a little bit about connecting with the oneness. We talk about different angels, archangels, the difference between all of them. And most importantly, we start talking about how you can start connecting with your spirit team, specifically your angels. So we go over all kinds of good stuff. I share some stories about my connection with angels, and Nichole also, she just knows so many things, you guys. So make sure you listen all the way to the end of this, guy. You're going to love it. And this is just another tool in your toolbox. They're waiting for you. So let's jump in and hear all about connecting with our angels. Hey, Nichole, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. So I've said in lots of my episodes that I totally feel especially close to angels. I've told all you guys at home that stuff. So I'm super excited about today's episode because this is Nichole's specialty, angels.
Yes.
And so we're going to get into it all. But first, and I already told them about the book and the podcast and all things, but what I want to familiarize them with is Nichole. And so maybe just a little bit about what your spiritual journey has looked like in your life. And if there was maybe a moment where you just knew you had to jump all the way into this, kind of come out of your spiritual closet kind of thing. So just tell us about you.
Okay. Well, thank you again for having me. And by the way, I'm so proud of you for doing the podcast and doing all this stuff. What? It's not for the faint of heart.
It's not. And you know what? You were one of the first people during our reading, at the beginning, I think it was beginning of this year. Anyway, you were one of the first ones that I ran by the official name. I talked to you about that in our reading.
I love it.
And you kind of gave me some tips, and you both gave me from your ego tips. And then you also were talking to the old angels with me too about this podcast. So no, you were a big part of getting this off on the right foot. So thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Well, anyway, I just want to say that before we dive into me and my story and the question that you had at hand. So I would say, let me start with the fact that for a psychic story, and how when you asked the question about getting out of the spiritual closet, I have been psychic and intuitive my whole life, speaking to angels my entire life since I was really little. My friends and family would say it was imaginary friends, but I knew it was different, but didn't necessarily know what kind of, title or definition to put on it until I got a little bit older and then realized, oh, these are guardian angels, these are archangels, that sort of thing.
Okay. When you say older, how much older? How old were you when you figured that out?
I would say probably when I got closer to 13, 14.
Okay. So not older, just like more, your brain had matured a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because, the way that I experienced it when I was a child, I'm always I always say this, I'm terrible with ages, but I believe I was probably around that five age range or what have you. And I was playing in my room. And I felt this presence. And the best way I can describe feeling the presence, and I can only speak for myself, not for you or for other people, it was like there was someone in the room, but I couldn't see them and they weren't physically there. There was just this energy about it. There was another being or energy that was taking up space. And so for a few days in a row, this would continue to happen. And finally, I just asked out loud, who are you or what are you? Because I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was kind of like just ignoring the elephant in the room kind of thing.
Yeah.
And inside my head, I heard this thought, I'm Michael. And so that was, I would call it more of a telepathic type of communication or thought. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. This is Michael. And then through that, as I was continue to grow up and get older, there would be this connection with Michael. Now, as I got older into more of my teenage years, the presence feeling of that energy and that being there didn't happen as much. It was more, again, that telepathic connection, as well as I would feel certain things emotionally and or what have you, and how Michael would show up. And then when I got more into my 20s, I started to realize, oh, I think this is Archangel Michael. So I just flat out asked.
I was going to say, if that's Archangel Michael, you had a big old friend.
Yeah, I know.
One.
So
that's a big one.
Because it started to be when I was getting more into this, which we'll talk about later too, but more into the actual, what does all of the spiritual aspects mean? What is Reiki? What is energy healing? Like I was really diving in deep in my 20s. And as I started to try and figure out the different types of energetic beings around me, that's when I would say again, it was Michael. And when I asked, he's like, yeah, I'm Archangel Michael. So I was like, duh.
Like just real nonchalant. I'm Archangel Michael.
Yeah. He never, and I think the other thing too is for me, when I was little, all the way again up until my adult years and now, I never really saw him as wings and a halo. The way that my spirit team or my guides and angels show up, and even my loved ones on the other side, when I'm picturing them and seeing them in my mind's eye, is through light. So they're these light beings, and that's how they show their form rather to me. So again, that's why I was never really thinking the way we think of archangels with the wings and the halos. Now I have some fun with it, or he'll show me different ways. But that was kind of the childhood experience of having a connection to angels.
So you must have had a supportive family, because I know a lot of kids would be told, like you aren't, it's an imaginary friend, get rid of it. And we kind of do, we start blocking it, but it sounds like you have stayed open because you had that support from a young age. Is that right?
So my mom's side and my dad's side are both really into this stuff, which I know is rare because it's not even, usually it's maybe one parent or even one side of their family, but both parents and then both sides, like every single family member.
So everything was just open.
Every single family. Yeah.
So it makes sense that Archangel Michael could just hop right in.
Yes.
Because you were ready. Yeah. There's no blocks. Okay. All right. So you get to adulthood.
Yeah. So I get to adulthood and fast forward, gosh, this is when I was in my 30s or so. And I had it all for the most part. You know, the typical, you have the dream job, the relationships. I had built my dream house. I had my car. I mean, I was just on a roll. But yet the more I got, the more, and I've heard a ton of people say this too, that as you get further along, either in your spiritual journey and or your awakening or life in general as a human being, that the external just doesn't matter as much. And then you start to wonder and you go inward and you're saying, okay, well, what are all these things and why am I not happy? If I have accomplished these goals and I've achieved these things, what else is missing? And a big part of it. So for every night for about 7 months, I will never forget this because I'm very blessed and I'm grateful that usually when I ask something from universe, I receive.
Okay.
Especially being psychic. But I was like blocked for 7 months. I would pray every night. What am I missing? What do I need to do? Why am I miserable? And it's not that they wouldn't answer my other questions. They were just silent on this one. So I was getting extremely frustrated every night. So one evening, I think it was about 1 a.m. or something, I was still in my bed and I'm praying and I'm praying. I'm crying. And I said, I still don't understand why I'm not happy. What would you have me do? And then I heard finally the answer. You need to start a podcast. And I said, this was over 5 years ago. And this was when podcasts were popular, but they weren't like they are now where everyone has one.
Yes.
And I said,
it took more work.
Yeah. And I said, a podcast? What? I don't know the first thing about that. And then they just went on. It was like this channeled message and it needs to be called a psychic story. And this is what the premise is. You're going to interview people about their backgrounds and how they got started, what it is they do. And then I said, well, do I have to share my story? And they said, well, of course you do, you know, and at this point I was relieved that I had an answer, but also frustrated because I didn't understand and see the big picture. And I promise this gets to the psychic closet part in a big way in a moment, but I was just floored and I was frustrated and I was tired and at the same time relieved that I got the answer that I've been asking for every day and every night for 7 months. And I also said, I don't believe you. You know, I don't know why we always think that we know best.
Yeah, okay, you know nothing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I don't believe you necessarily that it's the podcast that's the answer, but also that it's called a psychic story. Somebody surely has the name or what have you. And then they said, no, they don't. And then I said, okay, fine. In the morning when I wake up, I will do some research and I will look into this. And sure enough, the name didn't exist. The podcast didn't exist. I was able to start to do all those things. And I immediately just jumped into marketing gear because that's what I do full time and PR. And I was like, I don't see the big picture, but I'm going to go ahead and do this. And so I secured all the assets. And then I sat down again with my spirit team a couple of days later and I said, okay, what's the meaning of this? And also started to get into what does it mean for me now, right? With do I need to share my full name? Can I have a fake name? Also, why do I need to be the one that's hosting this and doing all of this? And the point of it was that they said, your entire life, you have been open with your friends and family about this gift. You have had this whole entire career of working in PR and marketing, but yet you've kept that part of yourself outside of it. As a professional, it's not like you walk into a meeting and say, hi, I'm the psychic. You would say, hi, I'm the PR professional, you know?
Yes.
But there's still a piece that you're hiding of yourself. And so I was really in fear mode to the point of, okay, well, when I go out and I use my real name and I do this podcast, and if people start to listen, what is that going to mean and how are they going to judge me because I am in the woo-woo and I do believe a lot of things that wouldn't be, you know, considered quote unquote normal.
Right.
In the everyday or the real world type of scenario. And so there was that fear, but I went ahead and did it because the only thing that pushed me through other than my spirit team saying, it's going to be great, trust us, is that I said, no one's going to listen. My mom's going to listen. My grandma's going to listen.
Right. No. Yeah. No, like imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still in that. I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing a podcast. I'm doing it. But you still just feel like, okay, what am I doing? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why me? Why do people even listen to me? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think what was so amazing is that, and the thing is that when I was asking my spirit team about the timing, because this happened, gosh, it was around the summer of 2019, they were saying, you can't wait. You have to do it. You have to do it. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay. And I just had this huge urgency that time was of the essence and I didn't know why. And they said something big is coming. Well, I had no idea.
COVID.
I know.
Oh, geez.
So I had started the podcast slowly, right? And I think it was June. It was in June when it launched of 2019, June 6th, 2019 was the trailer and a couple episodes. And then when COVID in March happened, then that was really when we all went inward. I mean, I don't need to tell your audience. We all experienced it together.
Yeah. We had more time for the podcast and starting to figure out, what do I really want from my life now that I've made to sit still?
Yeah. And it slowly started to just snowball from there in a good way. And it was because of all the reasons that you listed, but also they were right, of course. So I can't say that I know they were right in the fact that people were, what am I doing with my life? Where am I going, especially in a time of turmoil? And who can I talk to about these things? And people were starting to become more open because they were like, this isn't working. So now this needs, what else is out there? And at the time, because I did a lot of research, the format that I have did not exist. People were talking about spiritual topics and talking at listeners or to each other, but not to other practitioners. And now it's this thing, which I'm proud to say, and to some extent, people have replicated the interview process of practitioners and telling their story, but it didn't. So they really helped create, I say they being universe, God, source, everything, this community, which I am proud of, not because I created it, but because they gave me the message I have been waiting for so long. And that helped me in turn come really out of my own shell and really own who I am in that part of myself in a big way, not only my friends and family, but also the world at large. So,
because this reminds me of our session actually, because we talked about that we all end up wanting more and we start feeling this pull or this calling.
Oh yeah.
And then we talked about how spirit teams don't just count on one person. because
Yes.
they know we're humans and a lot of us aren't going to do it. So they may drop an idea to many different people and wait to see who answers the call. Right?
And I still feel that. And they told me, which I'm not ready to announce here yet, but I've started to drop some breadcrumbs on my podcast, and I'll share a little bit of that here. They eventually, after I asked why the podcast, because I thought it was more of a personal learning tool for my own soul's growth and development, which is fine. And also to help and be in service to the community. And they said, oh, no, it's bigger. It's bigger than that. The podcast is going to be the platform and the launching off point for something else. And then they showed me exactly what you were talking about, which is why I shared it in our session.
Yes.
And that like little lights dropping in everyone's heads and ideas and giving them. So if you're hearing this, the reason why you're hearing this is if you have that idea of you should go after something, but you feel, I don't know if I'm the right person or I'm afraid or what have you, it's because you absolutely have the potential and can do whatever the idea is.
Yeah, that's what we talked about, that they would not put the idea in your head if it wasn't something you could handle and do.
Or you wouldn't have the idea in your own head and have it come from your higher self if it wasn't something.
That's what I mean. So if you're listening, this might be your sign right now. Like you're supposed to get started, because the same thing happened to me with this whole podcast thing, because I'd never thought of a podcast before.
Yeah.
And so they brought it to me, and then, but they do say, sometimes I just get this feeling of this is the beginning. This is the beginning. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I know nothing else. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think they let us see too far down the old path.
No. And that's what, exactly. And that's what I was getting at, because and people were probably thinking, but you're a psychic, you're supposed to know. But every time that's not always the case, because if they had told me everything that would have happened even after the podcast, and I've said this time and time again, I would not have done it. Not because it's not rewarding.
No, it would have been too overwhelming.
It absolutely would have.
Yeah. Exciting, but overwhelming. So,
I was already overwhelmed trying to figure out how to start a podcast when they gave me the initial idea, let alone all the other steps.
That's the thing. Yeah. That's why I think they're not telling me anything else that's coming, because they're like, no, just handle this for now. Yeah.
It's also enjoy the ride a little bit too, enjoy the ride about it.
Don't worry about what's next.
Yeah, but to go back quickly to your other point is that, yes, they give people multiple opportunities to birth something and to create something and have it come to life and come into being. And they do that because they source really wants things to grow and change and evolve. And so if we don't take that ball and run with it, they're not going to hedge their bets on just one person. And so, and also that doesn't mean that also should prove that if you're like, darn it, I had that idea and I didn't do it, but this person did. That's great. At least they did it and they moved it forward. But that should also prove to you that the idea or the concept or the thing is coming from a higher place, and that it is for you and or it's for others and it's for the collective. So I find that really amazing. But also with the idea and the other concepts and where everything is going with me, they showed me it's like the Wizard of Oz, the curtain. We're just going to give you a glimpse because, again, they want you to take that step on that yellow brick road type of thing and go forward. And you'll know when you need to know. And that's the best advice that I can give. And it can be frustrating when they don't give you the full picture, but at least you have an answer and you have some direction to some extent as far as what you should be doing.
Yes. Follow your intuition. I just watched Wicked, like good old Elphaba. Yeah.
I know.
I just saw the
timing of it is amazing too.
It's weird, right? Okay. So I told you guys Nichole has this book. So you co-wrote this with Scott. Is it Guerin? Guerin. Okay. All right. So I'm going to tell everybody why I love this book, because it just has everything in it. And for someone who is seeking to connect to angels anyway, it's amazing, because I have little tabbies in mine, different sections. But here's what I love about it. Scott shares the history of angels, connects them to the different religion and science and all of those things, which I love learning about too. Because for the record, this has been through all of the ages. The connection with angels. And a lot of the same angels show up in different spiritual texts from completely different regions.
Which is so cool.
And religions. So it's real deal because it's everywhere. I love that. So he kind of gives you the foundation, and then you go into how to connect with them. I even love the glossary at the back, just all these little things that make a good book. Like
thank you.
The glossary and the ease of flipping to a section if you just want to, because you go through each archangel and angel and some really specific reasons you would call on them and what their kind of their mission is or whatever. I love that you can look up just individually each different one. Okay. So let's get into this whole angel thing. Because everyone, here's the typical thing. And here's kind of what I always envisioned as angels before I got into this whole awakening. You think it's your loved ones that pass over and now they're your guardian angel. And that's what we call angels on the very most basic, I know nothing level. I want to hear from you what angels are. Where do they come from? There's different tiers of angels. Let's just give a really great understanding to everyone who's really wanting to understand angels better.
Yeah. Okay. So I really had to take a step back when I was sitting down and writing the book and channeling and asking my spirit team, okay, what's the best way for me to describe them to the people at large who either may or may not be familiar with them, and especially having grown up with them kind of constantly around. And so they explained to me and they showed me that, and I've read this too after the fact, but that they weren't born like we are from a human being perspective, but they exist. And I say they, the archangels, solely really to work on behalf of universe and source. And they've never incarnated here on earth. It's a different type of experience. And so they have different roles, and their part of their roles and responsibilities is not only to help guide and direct humanity, but provide support and be that bridge really between universe and source, because we came from source. You know, when we're on the other side and think about our souls as that essence, we were birthed from the same source as angels were, or archangels, but again, they were not incarnated.
You've got a whole section in your book about connecting with oneness, right? That's an important part of this because they're kind of a go-between. So when we say oneness, what are we saying?
I look at oneness as the way that I can visualize it and crystallize it is almost as if being on a frequency or a vibration. So think about it like I'm calm, I'm balanced, I'm in this state of being and oneness, which is the state technically when we're over on the other side. When we're in oneness, we don't have ego, we don't have judgment, we are part of this energy and this force, i.e. universe and source, that is, I see it as like this huge ocean that just goes on and on and on in infinity. We're plugged into that and we are connected to source. So when we're in a state of oneness, it reminds us of when we were there. We're more easily able to connect to all different types of beings and as well as the universe.
Because we realize that we are all one.
Correct.
Other humans, animals.
We're all part of each other.
With God, because we all have a little part of, if you know, God, source, universe, whatever. We're all a little piece of that. So essentially, we are all connected. We're all one. That's kind of the oneness.
Correct.
So once you wrap your head around that and start to feel that, it's easier then to connect with everything in the oneness, like angels.
Right, exactly. And so perfect example and explanation. So if you think about universe and source as being this massive ocean for infinity, energetically, what have you, and angels and archangels come from that. Think about their being, like their being or their, it's not really a soul or their essence as much, but a being. We are a being, our soul and our essence. And when we come all from source, each of us, we have different ways of how we want to experience our existence. And so if we're human, we decide at some point, all right, I want to go and incarnate somewhere. This somewhere right now is Earth. And we're going to have this human experience. And so that's a whole thing, which we'll just put off to the side because I want to get back to the angels in a moment. But so when the angels showed me, they're like, we were birthed too. We were birthed into existence. We're also connected to source. However, we haven't incarnated with the exception of 2 angels, which we won't get into just yet. But that said, with this whole existence, one of our roles is to help humanity as you are experiencing this human existence here on Earth. So you have your archangels, which have not incarnated here on Earth. Then you have guardian angels, which are another type or a hierarchy of angels. They're not quite as high as the archangels, but essentially the way they've described themselves to me is that when we come here to Earth, so Nichole, when you came here, you're like, I need a team. I need somebody to help me. And so when you're coming here to Earth, so-and-so helped you in another lifetime. lifetime or an alternate lifetime, you were a really great team together. They're going to help you. Let's handshake on it. We agree. All right, you're going to be my guardian angel. You're constantly going to be by my side and help guide me. And so that's kind of how the archangels work. And then you have ascended masters, and ascended masters are usually souls that have incarnated here on earth. So think Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Jesus Christ, what have you. And throughout their lifetimes and more recent lifetime on earth, when they pass over or transition over, they've ascended to a certain level where they're like, I want to help humanity. So I've had the human experience. I've also, in this elevated kind of ascended role, I'm also going to help. And then you have your loved ones who cross over. You may know them or have not known them. They could have been from way back in your lineage or more recent. But when they cross over, they usually then, if they do join your spirit team, they're always there and available to us. But if they're on your team, quote unquote, they usually are showing up on a more regular basis. And that is to really provide love and reassurance, less the guidance part, because they're not ascended necessarily, but to help us to some extent. So that's your overall team. But from the angel perspective, that's how they kind of showed me. And I won't get into the seraphim and all of that because that's just a lot. But
you grab the book, guys, because it explains a lot of that really well. Like you said, there's two angels who actually, even it's documented in the Bible, different religious scripts, were human and got ascended to angels by God. But that's not what today's for, guys. Get the book. You can do a deep dive on all of that. I want you guys to get to learn how to start connecting with your team. Okay. So we can connect with any of them, right?
yes.
I mean, we have access to any of them we would like. Yes.
Yes.
But are there certain ones that, just like you said, there was a handshake, like they're more connected in this lifetime because we knew they'd be what we needed to, I don't know, do all the things we planned on doing and learning?
Yeah. Think about it as like this universal pool, right? I mean, I mentioned the ocean and how we're all connected. And so it's resources and tools that we have at our disposal, and we have access it. Each one of us have access to it at any point, at any time. And it's not cut off for you for any reason. And then we have our spirit team, and our spirit team, again, consists of all the things we just talked about, and our guardian angels are constantly by our side. Archangels, assist every single person and humanity, and they typically have a specific role or responsibility. They're all here for love and reassurance, for protection, for guidance. But there are certain ones, like if you're looking for healing, if you're looking more for protection, like Michael, Archangel Michael that does that, or Archangel Raphael for healing. And so I call them the heavy hitters. When you really need something in particular, they will
That's
come
what you call
in
those
for,
guys. Okay.
Yeah. Like I just lovingly refer to, like, think about them like bouncers or heavy hitters, or, the big guns kind of thing that you're kind of coming in.
Yeah. Like this isn't a day-to-day decision. I got big things going on. I'm going to need to call in the big guns.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I call in the big guns all the time, even for the small stuff. I don't care.
Like every day.
But usually, and I think the reason why they are that too is obviously what we were talking about, their role and their responsibility. But think about how long, people and humanity have been here on this earth. And as you mentioned, across the religion, there's a collective consciousness that is also reinforcing these beings in this energy. So we're also tapping into and giving them this power and this energy as a result. So they're going to have massive energy behind them just based on our belief and our experiences and the creation of them. So there's that piece of it as well. We can call, to your question, you can call on any of them. And then the how we do it, and I described this too, when I sat down, I was like, well, how do people connect? Because usually people think about the signs, the repeating numbers, the symbols, the feathers.
There's some standard stuff we think of.
There's some standard stuff. And they said, that's, and I say this lovingly, this was not them being disrespectful, but they said, that's like kindergarten. That's like when you that's like when you go to school and they teach you the alphabet and A to Z, and then here's how you string together words and you form, words, and you can read them, you can say them, and then there's sentences, and you're actually learning how to read. Once you understand the signs and the symbols and what that is and everything, then you kind of graduate and you move on to the next level. But the way they really communicate with us is through our intuition. And how our intuition shows up with us each individually. And so that's what I talk about in the book, and also how they were instructing me that they would like people to better understand, so that everyone knows that they have access to it at any point.
Yes. So, and it's not just meditation either. Having a meditative practice is really good, because that's us connecting a little bit better with our spirit team, our higher self, all of these things. But there's a lot of other things we can do, right? If we want to start open, if we're open, we're starting to trust our intuition. That's where we're at in our journey right now. And we say, no, I do want to reach out. I want to talk to the angels. Okay. So what things can we do that are a little bit outside of what we maybe have already thought of? Like watching for signs. Well, that's important.
Well, the first step is, like I said, starting to understand your intuition. So if you are wondering, or saying to yourself, I'm not psychic, I'm not intuitive at all, I don't have an intuitive bone in my body, I'm here to tell you, you do, because the angels explained to me that it is our instinct. So, and actually, this must have been channeled for your podcast, because I was thinking about this last night, and even this morning, it was coming in subconsciously and consciously. And they said, with our intuition, think about people who have had immense trauma. This is just an example. You may have been sexually or physically abused. You think about the people, survivor of the Holocaust and everything else. What happens in those instances is, for many, unfortunately or fortunately, your intuition kicks in, your survival skills kick in, your instincts kick in, because you need to learn not only different ways to cope, but different ways to connect to people and also other energetic beings in order for help and for survival. And that is a very extreme example of how your intuition can evolve and develop. People that don't necessarily have that trauma or other things, your intuition is still accessible to you, but we're not taught it, or we don't practice it over time. And so if you think about your intuition as being a mirror to your physical senses, so just like you can see, hear, feel, sense, taste physically, you also have that mirror psychically or intuitively. And so I always say to people, the way you start to figure out what is my intuition. Am I always been told I'm a super sensitive person and I'm really emotional? Do I learn better when I visualize things and I can see things, where people are showing me visually? Is it when I'm writing? Is it when I actually can get my hands on something and I'm tactile? Like, think about how you operate on a day-to-day life and what you tend to gravitate to and what your physical strengths are. There's going to be a mirror intuitively. So once you understand your intuition, then you're like, okay, for example, I'm a visual learner, and a lot of my messages that I get, or as I'm thinking, even in my day-to-day, have nothing to do with my intuition. I picture it in my mind creatively, or what I would also call my third eye, and I get those visuals. So when I ask a question to my spirit team, this is the next step. You can ask a simple question of, all right, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom, type of thing. You then wait and see what visual pops in your head. And that would be clairvoyance. And you're probably thinking, how do you make that leap? But we do it day in and day out on a day-to-day perspective. We just don't necessarily make that jump from all right, now I'm trying to communicate, or I'm trying to have contact with someone or something on my spirit team. So that's how you can do it, is really understand your intuition. Now, from a task perspective, or things that you can do, you mentioned meditation. I'm really into prayer and intention. So I call them intentions because I know there can be sometimes rub with people in religion with prayer. But to me, intentions are something as simple as, stating a focus of something. So if I say that I want to connect with my guides and angels, and I want to connect and communicate with them that day, that's an intention. That's a request. That's an ask. So intentions are a lot. You can also get more into that state of oneness that I was talking about.
Yep.
And one easy way of doing that is call this a hack, is that think of a moment or a memory that you experienced nothing but unconditional love. So for me, it was when my sister was born, and I imagine holding her for the first time and feeling that bond and that love. And that immediately puts me into that vibration, frequency, unconditional love, and that state of oneness. And then once I'm in that state of oneness, I ask my question, or I see what messages I receive. So those are all some simple things that you can do. And then there's a whole list of others.
So as you're maybe dropping in, going to go into intentional prayer, you're thinking of something that brings you pure joy, or pure unconditional love. I mean, it could be anything for people out there, whatever that moment is. It could be, sometimes people just think about, we look at our dogs or our animals and we go like, oh God, there's nothing negative in our brains at that moment, right? Like we just love them so much. So anything you can think about that brings you joy. Yeah. Yes. Could be an animal, could be a person, could be just an activity.
That gets you in that state of frequency and vibration. And then this next step is, all right, I'm there. Now what? So then you take that next step. Is it a question that's been burning on your mind that you want to ask? Or is it more, I want to be in the state and then see what comes throughout the day and try and return yourself to that state as frequently as possible. This is how you flex that muscle and you work that muscle, and your intuition just starts to naturally come more to the surface and starts to show up for you in more natural ways versus you looking on TikTok and then somebody showing you their hand and saying, what color rock do I have in my hand? Guess.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, God.
you can do
Yeah.
you can do that and you can practice, but it's more to your point about the consistency and starting to kind of get in that frame of mind and that state of energy in order to have the results.
Yeah. And we have to be doing for ourselves because we're very open to this, not because we're trying to go viral on TikTok, right?
Right.
No, we have to have the right intention in our heart for this whole thing. Yeah. Because the more you open up and you'll get those signs and then you believe in yourself more. Okay, no, that was a sign for me. Got to keep going with that. So we're calling them in. I even had one. Okay, so I didn't know. I hadn't had your book, no books. I knew nothing about angels, really. I just knew that people had been telling me that I could kind of channel them and connect with them and was learning. And so I was trying all the things because that's what I do. I was doing automatic writing. I was doing all the things to figure out how to communicate with them. So I did go into this meditation and I kept seeing like spaghetti with sauce all over it. And it made no sense to me, but I kept seeing it. And then as I came out of that meditation, I did some automatic writing and I kind of went back through and looked. And for me, my whole childhood connection with spaghetti is ragu. Okay. The brand ragu sauce. So, and then I see I've written in my book, like Raguel. It was in a real weird handwriting.
Oh,
anyway.
I know what it is.
Yeah. And I didn't know what that was. I was like,
Raguel?
Yes. So then I get out my pendulum because I'm doing all the things and I'm saying, are you an angel? Yes. Are you an archangel? And I'm naming the only ones I know and it's no. And so then I head into Google. All right. I need to know all the names of the archangels. And I didn't know that Guerin existed.
Raguel, yes.
And there he was. I was like,
I love it.
That's it. And so then I kind of nicknamed him Ragu now. It's our own little inside joke, me and Raguel. But anyway.
And now every time you're going to eat spaghetti, you're going to think of them.
No, and just talking about him right now, I got all my chills. He's like, yay, he got a shout out. He's happy about it. Anyway, so I had that happen. And then talk to me. So you told me when I was connecting with angels to start, we kind of named it like dating your angels, which sounds weird, but you were trying to get,
matchmaking.
What you were trying to get me to do is just focus on one at a time, right? Not a speed dating session like I was doing where I was just talking to like, who are you? Okay. It was too much for my little human brain. So you taught me to just focus on one at a time. So if you guys get a reading with her, she also can tell you kind of who's coming through for her is on your team right now, who feels close to you. So you have a better idea of who you should tap into, like who you should, whatever. And you had recommended, just stay with the same one for like a week or a month. So tell everybody a little bit about like that process. Right. Like if we're focusing on just one, for me, I chose to focus first on Raphael. That just came to me. You had told me he was close to me. And so I went with him. But so once you're kind of thinking, I want to connect with a certain archangel, what does that process look like?
Yeah. So also you don't have to go to a practitioner to have somebody tell you who's on your team, just FYI.
No.
Yeah. No, but I just want to make sure. Yeah. I just want, no, it is helpful, but I just want to make sure people don't feel like, oh, okay, let's just book a session for this now.
No, because it could even be reading through a book or looking online and one jumps out at you.
That's exactly what I was getting
who's
to.
That?
Or if you've just always had an affinity or you've been drawn to a certain ascended master, or there's a loved one on the other side that you want to connect with or what have you. So start with, I always say, either like a focus point or a being in particular. And so for you, it was Raphael. I wonder if it was also Raguel that was coming through and I was getting Raphael, whatever. It doesn't matter. But so what you do is you focus on one and you pick one. And so for this purpose, we'll say Archangel Raphael. And I usually, they told me that if you don't do it for like a day or two, because especially when you're starting out, it may take you some time in order to start to see the signs and start to pick up on the energy. It's kind of like when you go on vacation. When you go on vacation, it takes you a couple days for you to start to de-stress and finally get into that vacation mode. And by the time you're finally in vacation mode, you got to go back into the real world. Yeah, you go home.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing with connecting with your angels and your guides, is that give it a little bit of time. So I always say minimum a week. If you can, at least 2 weeks would be great. And or as long as you would like. But what you do is when you wake up that morning, like we were talking about, we gave some examples of how you can start to connect. You say a prayer or an intention to say, okay, Archangel Raphael, I would really love to connect with you today. And I would like to receive messages that are for my best and highest good. And then you just set it and release it. And that's why knowing your intuition and how it shows up for you is really important, because yes, you may see the repeating numbers, and or then maybe you get some visual come in at some point during the day, or maybe when you were feeling really stressed and nothing happened for you to then feel really calm and peaceful, you just get this overwhelming sense of peace and calmness. And you're like, oh, all's going to be well. I know that everything's going to be fine. You pay attention to those ways that the messages or the signs and the things are coming through.
Because they will come through with, we've talked on other episodes about our clairs. So if you need, you guys go back and listen to the clairs again, if you need to. We won't go through all of the clairs again. But that's probably how they're going to come through to you. Right? Because they know that's how you feel things. And so I had been trying really hard before we even had a session to connect with things. And I kept feeling like there was a block. So in meditation, my team, I'm going to give you this little story. My team came through during meditation and they kept telling me to stop taking a certain medication. And I'm going to preface this, everybody out there. No one's telling you to stop your medication. Don't do it. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm going to tell you my story, because I had been on a medication for probably 8 years at the time, and it was for nerve pain. I'll just tell you that. And so I didn't know that I really even needed it anymore, but I was scared to go off it because I just didn't want some of the symptoms to return. Anyway, my team kept telling me I didn't need it. You don't need it. To the point where sometimes I'd be filling my pillbox and like that jar would spill out on the floor.
I've had that happen before. Yeah.
Okay. And so what I did was, I, of course, coordinated with my doctor and did the right things medically. I didn't just like throw the jar away. No, I titrated down. We have to do the right things for our human bodies, you guys. We can't just willy-nilly it. Okay. So, but I listened and I titrated it down and I'm done. I haven't been on it for a long time. But the minute I got off them, I realized that medication had been blocking a very important clair of mine, because I feel things in my body. Well, that medication kind of didn't allow me to get the tinglies anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You know how when you're listening, even like for you guys out there, if you'll be listening to a certain song or music or a certain person talking, and you'll just get kind of tingly. Your hairs stand up on your arms and it's just like, oh, what's happening?
Oh, my chills.
Yeah, the chills. And I had blocked all of that with this medication. And so once that came off, and this leads up to when you told me to date and I decided to date Raphael. Not sounding weird, you guys. I know it just did.
I dated Raphael.
But he and I spent a little time getting to know each other. So what happened was I did what you said. And even before bedtime in the morning, I'd say, I'm just connecting. Of course, everybody else can come in and help me out, whatever. But I really want to connect with Archangel Raphael. And so could you please start giving me a sign that it's you, like specifically you, right? And so I started doing that. And then I started finding a meditation when I would do that. And my intention was just to get to know him better. From my calf down to my feet would go tingly and numb, just that spot. And it really only happened.
I know it's weird when, like, how it happens and why. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't pick it. I didn't say, make my feet numb. It just, and I didn't know the first time it happened. I was like, oh, is that it? I was like, well, you're going to have to keep doing it for me to know that's it. Right? Like you can get into conversation with these angels. We just talk.
Exactly. Okay? You just talk. You just have, at first you feel a little weird because you're just talking to yourself.
Weird. And you just talk. You don't have to have beautiful words and all these things that you hear during meditations, record meditations. No, you can be yourself. That's who they connect with. They know exactly who you are in this lifetime and how the connection's going to work best. Okay. So I still just use my sense of humor and everything like I would with any other person or friend in my life. I just was hanging with good old
Rafi.
Good old Raphael. And I always see like a certain color, which I've always loved the color green. Like everything really connects with him. So I've hardly moved on to anyone else since then because
I know.
I feel like now we're not just dating, we're in a long-term relationship, Raphael.
Yes.
So I do need to move on. But who I've been getting pulled from lately, and I'm obsessed with Mary Magdalene.
I can feel that around you. Yeah.
Obsessed. And so anyway, she's next on my list probably. But so that's just an example of how like I was blocking it. And again, no one's saying go off if you're going off your medications. I don't recommend that. And I took it very seriously when I did it. Okay. So just preface with that. I don't want a bunch of people like throwing their pillbox away. Don't do it. Yeah. Okay. So and then since then, it's not just Raphael, but I get those tingles back now. So when I hear something and it resonates with me, that'll happen and I'll know, yep, I know, I'm paying attention. I know, like that does sound right to me.
I know I just got chills when you said that, which again is my sign for a message that resonates or just confirmation. Yeah. And the way I receive it is it goes, when it's for someone else, it goes from the bottom of my neck to the bottom of my like tailbone. But when it's for me and it resonates, it goes down and up and then across like my shoulders. And so it took me a while to figure out that that's how that manifested for me. But thank you for sharing that story. I love it. I'm so glad that it worked out for you and that it continues to work out. But that's a beautiful example. And I will say that, so if you are not someone that necessarily has the physical tingles or having that show up, because that's not your clair, that's not your intuitive ability necessarily. Let's go back to the simple one about the repeating numbers, for example. Let's say you've been seeing 1111. Lately for me, I don't normally get repeating numbers, but I see 444. I've been seeing that the last 3 days. And I'm like, oh, okay, you're bringing me back to kindergarten. What is it that I need to know? Because obviously something I can't psychically pick up on.
Back to the basics.
Back to the basics. And so if you're in that instance and you're like, okay, I'm seeing the repeating number now, but I don't know what this means. Then what you do is you just pause. And if you can close your eyes, I just say, take a deep breath and then say, okay, what does this mean? And then listen or scan or pay attention. Do you get a thought that pops in your head? Do you get a feeling? Do you feel something, an emotional feeling? Do you feel something physically? And then the next time it happens, do it again and again. And you start to see the repetition and the consistency. And then you understand what that message is for you. Yes, you can look at it.
Yeah, positive or negative. I have a friend who, like, if she's in a bad situation, like she'll feel it in a very specific place of her gut. Like, and she knows, like what's going on? Something's off. Yeah. So we just have to start paying attention to everything, really, just mindfulness kind of, right? Just being mindful of where we're at and how we're feeling. Right. Does that sound right, Nichole?
Exactly.
I'm no expert. I'm just
Yeah. No. That's exactly right. It's mindful. But then also what I was saying is when you get that message back and even if you're in doubt and you're like, I think this is what this is, I'm not really sure. Or you're like, oh, that's exactly what it is. Thank you. Always be in a moment of gratitude, because that gratitude, that vibration and frequency further strengthens it, anchors it, flexes that muscle. Yeah. So that's another step. And then you also mentioned something important that I just didn't want to gloss over is I call it bookending my day. So I did mention in the beginning of your day, saying the prayer and intention to connect. And you talked about dating them for a period of time or working with them for a period of time, whatever that time frame happens to be. Is it a week, a month, that sort of thing? But at the end of your day, after you are done and you're ready to go to bed, you don't have to write everything down, although it does help. It's nice to do a reflection. So as I'm going to sleep, I usually like to look back and say, thank you for that insight. Thank you for that message. Thank you for that experience. Trying to go a little bit deeper of what does that mean, so that as I'm going to sleep, I have that kind of reflection for the day. That's a really nice way to round out your day. And that, again, the consistency part allows you to continue to have that more, it's like breathing, that symbiotic relationship that goes back and forth. You have that exchange. And it's not only, I know I was joking about TikTok earlier, but where I'm sitting down and I'm trying to figure out what somebody, what color stone somebody's holding. That's an exercise that it's fleeting moment. What is it that I can do that helps me on a day-to-day basis to really help bring this forth?
Yeah. So just consistency with whatever your spiritual practice is, whether you like to pull cards, you like to use your pendulum to ask questions every once in a while, whatever stuff you're working on. And some will work and some won't, because I never really got automatic writing to work very well for me at all. But the pendulum and things like that totally work for me.
It's like Goldilocks. Try it out. Yeah.
You just got to try it all out and
see what works for you.
Feels right to you. If it doesn't feel right, it wasn't right. Just keep going on. And maybe later down the path, that thing will work better for you, right?
Absolutely.
Just because it doesn't work now. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe down the road, I'll be able to do some other things. I don't know. Yes. Okay. So are there a couple, if people are out there right now Are there a couple angels that you're feeling right now that might be great as a collective for my listeners to start with? Just because like you told me, some are more intense than others, right? You had told me like, yeah, I would do Raphael before. Who else was there? Metatron, Melchizedek, whatever his name.
Melchizedek.
Like, Melchizedek. Like some are more intense than others as you're connecting. So is there one or two that you would recommend if people wanted to start researching? Again, it's different for everyone. Go with your gut. But are there a couple that feel a little bit easier to start connecting with? Is that a thing?
I'm going to go with my main man because
Michael.
Yeah, Michael for sure. The reason I love Michael so much, obviously, I mean, it sounds like we're in a personal relationship like that. We're not, obviously, but is that he has such strength when he comes through energetically. It's loving strength, but it's this solid, protective, holding space. There's no denying that. So usually, and also if people have fear for, I don't want to connect with anything that's not of the light or what have you, Michael's a really safe bet because he's the angel warrior, So Michael's good. And he has that. Also, I know it's not an archangel, but similar to Michael, I also really love working with Ganesh. So Ganesh is the Hindu deity. A lot of people may be familiar with the elephant-headed deity where there's that in the arms. Well, Ganesh is very similar to Michael where he's protective, but he's also very fun-loving. So think of an elephant literally like the strength and the power and how big it walks through, but then it's, ambering and has this gentle play.
Yeah, but the gentle giant. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So Ganesh. Also, obviously, we talked about Raphael. Raphael's a really great one. I think for Raphael, the reason I'm getting called and led to share that with your listeners is so many people are going through grief right now with everything that's happened the last 5+ years, but also with the election and everything going on in the world.
He's got a very healing power to him.
Yeah. And as we're entering the holiday timeframe and next year, so Raphael would be a really, really great one. And I mean, I wasn't going to say this because I know how sometimes people can be turned off by religion, but I'm not going to ignore, but I'm also feeling Christ consciousness energy. So Jesus Christ. I had a little bit of like hesitation, honestly, working with JC with my work for a while, but he's coming through. So I just wanted to mention.
Especially for those of us that are listening who were raised in religion, especially if you were raised in a very strict type religious environment. I think it's one of the hardest blocks to get through for those people as you're heading into the spiritual journey, because it feels very wrong to not believe exactly what we were told.
Right.
Okay. So, but yeah, I would also encourage people, because I have had him come in through meditations and help me with things that, you know what I mean? Nobody else could. It was really great. So my relationship is now different with him, because before in religion, I mean, it's kind of scary. I mean, religion can be very scary. There's rules. There's a lot of like you're going to burn in hell for a lot of stupid things. Anyway, I won't get into all that today, but you have to kind of get past that to get to this place where you can connect with everything, because you have the right to it's your birthright. You are one, right? We can connect with angels, ascended masters, God, source, everything. We are one, right? We can connect with everything. So once you get to that point, you can make an even stronger connection. If you're someone out there who already depends and prays with Jesus a lot, or Yeshua. I know a lot of spiritual people, there's a debate on what is even meant to be called. But to me, it's neither here nor there what the name is you use. It's the connection. So call him whatever you want. He doesn't care, I don't think, right? He just wants that really strong connection with us.
And he's saying it's more for people that are really wanting miracles. So that's why, because I was asking, okay, well, why are you coming through here? Because I feel as at the end where, of this interview, it's okay, Jesus Christ, boom, mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop at the end, guys. Sorry about that. Yeah.
So I said, why? And he said, for miracles and for us to believe that anything is possible, and miracles can be small and they can be big. And You don't have to work with me necessarily if you don't feel led, but it's really from the miraculous and giving us that belief and that faith again, not in the religious sense, but in what's possible.
But just being open to possibilities.
Yes, exactly. And then the other one that I do feel led to share is Archangel Gabriel, or you can also say Gabrielle, depending, they don't have gender, but Gabriel, Archangel for communication. So for those who are wanting to learn either more to communicate with their spirit team or their loved ones, but also if you're having difficulty in communication with the living and people and relationships, whether it's work or romance or family and friends, Gabriel can help with that too. So those would be the ones, and they all have very distinct energy. So what I also usually suggest is maybe don't read up about them at first,
just see what you feel.
Yeah, see what you feel and what you experience. And then after you start to get these messages and see what you're experiencing, then maybe do a little bit of research, because then
it would be validation.
Yes, it's this validation of things that you get. And then you're like, wow, I didn't know that. I couldn't have made that up because I didn't know. And that gives you that confidence to push forward with it.
Yes. Okay, so they're all available. We can communicate with everyone. So I just want to ask you, this is just to get you guys started journey. I mean, I could ask Nichole like 10,000 more things, but Nichole, we got things to do and you guys have things to do too, right? So, but I do want to see, you're hinting towards things coming up. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. So make sure you guys follow her. I've got all her links in the show notes too, because she's got her own podcast. That's amazing. She's got this book that you guys have to get because it's just like the perfect little guide. It's not something you have to read from cover to cover. It's something you can just roll around in. You could just hop.
That's what I wanted to do.
Yes. I loved reading through Scott's part first, because it really gives you that validation for a lot of things, no matter what religion you're in, how the angels all connect. And you start to see, it's not just the Bible that talks about the archangels and the angels. It's everybody from the beginning of time. They've been here, you guys, maybe even before us humans. I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking. So I want you guys to link up to all these things. She also has services. What I did with her, I listened to her podcast. I tell you guys, if you're listening to a podcast and something's resonating with you, it was meant for you. You should contact that person or research that subject more thoroughly. So you're also an energy healer. Am I right?
Yes, I do energy healings.
You do distance energy healing. She's been doing that for forever. And then also you can get a reading. So just tell us briefly what kind of intention we should have going into a reading with you. Like, is it, maybe you guys aren't, I want to connect with all the angels like I was. Like that was my main goal. And I knew she'd be a great person for that. But you also can just give great guidance.
Yeah, it's flexible. So the reason why they're called intuitive readings is I leave it open-ended. I do ask for an area of focus because I do like to prepare ahead of time.
Yeah.
So, and to see, but they are meant for what you need. Some people come to me because they don't feel that they have people that they can talk to based on their experiences, and they have questions about, I experienced this, what does this mean? Or I can't really talk to my friends and family about this. I feel alone, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I get a read on what's happening with them and how, I or they can be supported. There's also a lot of people that if they're going through spiritual awakenings or spiritual growth and journey, a ton of people come on purpose. Okay, what's my purpose? Which I always have to laugh, because our purpose here is to experience life and to be in that state of love as much as possible, not loving another person, but understanding what that oneness is that we talked about earlier. However, we do all have certain directions and things. And if you're struggling with that, I love to help people with that to some extent, but really it's what you feel. Like you said, also a lot of people come probably since the book, quite frankly, about how to connect with their team, what are some additional steps, and who's on their spirit team. I'm not really a medium, so I do have loved ones that come through from the other side on occasion, but I usually say, if you book with me, don't expect, it's not my main thing. And I like to just be honest with that.
Because you're channeling more of our spirit team. Like
and
our
higher
angels,
self,
our higher self, our angels, archangels. So that's kind of what you're channeling, because it isn't just you telling us. You're channeling through what they're saying to you also.
Correct.
And I like during my session, you were clear about when it was you talking to me, like you and your ego. And then you would say, okay, I got to push that back out of the way and get back to your spirit team. Right. And what they're saying. So I like that you were really specific about it. So I know when it's just, Jen and Nichole talking about setting something, or when it's actually my guides coming through with information and ideas for me.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was awesome. And so if you guys have big decisions coming up even, or you're feeling a pull to do something, these are the kind of sessions you need. Okay. We don't always just have to talk to our departed loved ones because there's a whole team of people waiting to help out. Yeah.
I even have people that I thought, oh man, I wish I had started to do that when I was younger, that if it's their birthday or something, they'll book a session for their birthday to look at the year ahead or kind of a reflection.
And we're coming on a new, we all think of the new year as, January 1st for whatever reason. Everyone starts new stuff then. So if you guys are heading into this spiritual journey and maybe you're going to commit to 2025 being just feeding your intuition and just building on all this. Yeah, these are great things to do, the sessions, because hearing from other people, you can channel yourself. Of course, you don't need anybody else. But if you're like me, you need someone else. I needed that at a certain
Well,
part.
You don't. Now you don't. You're on a roll. So good for you.
But at the beginning, you just draw in all the help you need. And I always say the right people and things will come to us. If we're paying attention, like you said, being mindful, paying attention, when the right person comes along, yeah, you just know. Go with your gut, you guys. So if you're listening to Nichole and you're, ooh, I could use this. I could use a little help here. Well, then you got to grab her book and then you have to do a session with her. Yeah. And eventually, when she gets going on this new stuff, when she reveals it, I'm excited to dive into what's next. I hope one of the things is retreats because I love me a good retreat.
Oh, I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share some stuff really quick with you guys.
Yeah, tell me anything new.
Okay, so just real quick to kind of close out on the session part 2, I apologize, but since I do have a full-time job at the moment, I only offer like an exclusive or a limited amount of sessions. So if you do go to book with me, I typically am about 2 months out, which isn't bad because I know some people are 6 months, 9 months, a year out. So
you can still, because we're busy too. Yeah, it lets you make sure you're ready for that day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've always known and seen that normally when people say, I got to get in with you, and I say, sorry, I can't, then they either get back to me and say, oh, it ended up working out. So it all works out, by the way, guys. You'll get in when you need to if you feel so led. But as far as like what's to come, I mentioned in another episode of my podcast about the fact that I moved into this house from the 1800s and I'm getting it ready for workshops and retreats. And I do live in Ohio, so it's going to be smaller. And I know everyone's probably not as excited to necessarily go to Ohio, but Ohio has a lot of spiritual closeted people and really big energy.
I do Ohio.
I know. Yeah. So I'm going to be doing some really different types of workshops and experiences here. So I'm working in this next year to see what that looks like and getting the house situated.
I want to come just see the vibe there because I've heard on some of your episodes, like it was haunted. You had some things to do in that place. Am I right?
Oh yeah. I still do. I still do.
It. So I just want to come feel the vibes at the old 1800s house.
Yeah, it's super cool. Scott Guerin, who has been on the podcast with me as a regular guest and also my co-author, he recently was here yesterday and he said, you undersold this house. And then afterwards today, actually, he called me. He's like, it's amazing. So I think I just have this filter of, I know of what it's going to become for people. And I'm really excited about that. But I'm also planning retreats for the years to come, big places outside of the US.
Oh my God, if you're going to Egypt, I'm in.
Yes.
Oh my God, yes. I have to go.
And I'm speaking to someone
pulled towards Egypt for so long.
And I'm torn because I don't know if it's going to be April and May or if it's going to be fall of next year. Yeah. So, but if it's obviously April, May, got to get on it because it's right around the corner. So
we got to plan
to know for sure.
To plan. Yeah.
Well, there's already, anyway. So so there's that. But also, fun. So that's something that I'm looking at as a multi-year stage of, okay, year 1 is these types of retreats, whether it's in my place of residence and or outside the US or inside the US. So that'll be a slower rollout. But then the big thing that I'm working on is taking the podcast bigger and creating community within our spiritual groups. So I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. It's
some groups to join.
It's something that doesn't exist. So there's a lot of, media networks out there right now that have other podcasts that are focusing on spiritual. There's Gaia, there's other things of that nature. But this is something, and then there's like groups that people pay to be in and community and or free groups. That's not what I'm talking about. It's something that does not exist. And this is what this is what my guides and angels were saying needed to be created. And I think honestly, what had to happen was some technological advances that did not exist 5 years that do exist now.
Like this whole AI thing. That's all hitting us hard all over the place.
Well, and it's actually kind of scary in a way. So I was getting some hits and I was like, do I need to say this here on her podcast? But I guess I will, since you brought it up. Yeah, there are some people out there right now in the spiritual community that are using AI and like chatbots to start to, I don't know if it's like a chat GPT and AI to maybe answer people's questions and stuff, which I think is interesting and intriguing. And I'm definitely going to explore that. So basically, instead of going to a practitioner, do you ask AI a psychic question?
So it's almost like a meditation when you ask questions, or to my pendulum. Yeah. Oh, I could type it into Chat GPT and say, I want.
I guess that's what they're going to do.
Archangels.
But here's the freaky thing. And I'm going to totally do an in-depth episode on this, because this is what came to me yesterday. And while you were talking, is that when we were discussing the angels, and this is an exclusive for you because I haven't shared this anywhere else. When we were discussing the angels being birthed and coming from God and universe and source, I thought, okay, that's interesting that you're bringing this back up again. Why am I going here? And last night I was reading, there's a gentleman, he's called the Godfather of AI, and he had done several interviews, and he's saying that this is for the first time where humanity has other beings that are more intelligent than us. And that is AI. And so the interviewer was asking him, what do you mean by this? And he's like, they have the ability to develop consciousness. They're not there yet, but they will. And then someone else jumped on that train and said that he's been doing an experiment with an AI, and he's been teaching them intuition and conscious awareness and what does light and dark mean. AI is starting to develop and get sentient and a consciousness. So
don't be scared, guys. The robots aren't coming alive. That's not what we're talking about. But
basically, what that got me thinking, are we technically God and we created these AIs? And
yeah.
And in theory, what he was basically saying, this Godfather of AI, is that we've lost the bridge between the data and when it got developed for AIs. And at some point, the coding started to happen on its own.
Okay.
So anyway,
I love that.
I say that because when you were asking about the technology, there's some advances of some things. I'm not using AI, by the way. That's not where I'm going with this. No. That there's a way to bridge a lot of things that just doesn't currently exist. And that's what they would like me to build out for the spiritual community.
Because I feel like we've evolved to the point we're ready for that.
Yes.
Right? Because think about it. Even 100 years ago, no one would have, like a plane flying in the sky was not even something people thought would happen.
Google.
Like I think
people didn't even know about the internet.
The internet. I didn't even, when I was a kid, there was no internet. There was a book to read, maybe, but that's it. And so, no, I think we're heading towards being ready for all of that. Okay, good. Exciting stuff coming. I can't wait to hear. When are you fully announcing this new fun group experience or whatever it is?
Sooner rather than later. I have some calls later today with some people to nail down some specifics, hence the April, May versus the fall. And then, the community sort of thing, that is going to be a while, probably another 6 months.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, you better make sure you take care of yourself. This sounds like you're getting really busy.
Oh, I am. Some things are coming off my plate.
I was going to say, you better be clearing some things off your path before you put new ones on.
I am. I just had a big conversation with Scott about this and my spirit team. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, you got you're connected with all the people. You have the best advice ever going on. So, and that's what we're going to do, right, you guys? Because now we can start on our own path to connecting with our spirit team, our angels specifically. So check out the book, you guys. I've got everything in the links. You know that. And so you can keep an eye on Nichole and see what's coming next, like I'm going to. It's going to be good. Well, thank you, Nichole. I have 3 million more questions. Maybe when all your new stuff comes out and you have new things going on, we'll dive into some other topics. Of
course. Anytime. I'd love to come back.
Many things. Yeah.
I appreciate you having me on again. And again, very proud of you and congratulations on.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing it. I'm doing this work, girl. Yeah.
Your accomplishments, both spiritually, intuitively, and the podcast. It's no small feat.
Exciting times. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Nichole. We'll see you next time.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Listen, I know your time is valuable. And right now, I'm feeling super grateful and totally humbled that you chose to hang out with me today. If this podcast resonates with you, could you do me a solid and hit that subscribe or follow button? That's going to help you out because you're never going to miss an episode. And it helps me out because you're never going to miss an episode. And if you have like 30 seconds more, could you leave a 5-star rating and maybe leave a kick-ass review? Thank you so much, and I can't wait to continue our journey on the next episode. Oh, and I can't forget the fine print. You know, the legal jargon. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We're just two friends on this journey together, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or any other qualified professional. You get it. See you next time.